Hey, everybody, welcome to the Mosaic Podcast. Boy, it's been a long time since I've been on this podcast because I've been enraptured by something else that I've been doing, which is called 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers. I thought that I was still building up to my 50, but what turns out is I counted them yesterday and I'm already at 55 before I started my second episode. So I'm starting a second episode and we'll do 50 more conversations. But so I've almost forgotten how to do this one, but I'm happy to have my guest with me today who is experienced in radio, who is a powerhouse in radio, who has worked for two of the biggest self realized companies in the world in radio. Before I blab too much, let me just give you a bio. You know, I'm not great on bios, but this person's becoming a friend of mine. I've looked up to her for a long time. We've had a few conversations, and it's just an honor to have her here with me. Diane Ray. She's been working in radio broadcasting for over 30 years. Since she first cracked the mic at age 19 at WSHE, She's Only Rock and Roll in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for their amateur hour. She's worked most of her on-air radio career in the Miami market with stops in Austin, Texas, and San Diego, California. I'm going to put a place where you can view her complete resume in the show notes, but it's been over a decade that she's working in digital media and online broadcasting as network radio manager and producer at hayhouseradio.com. She was the director of programming there, and at unityonlineradio.org since 2017. She's now launched her own podcast, Be Present, The Diane Ray Show, with Unity Online Radio. That launched in August of 2018. There'll be links in the show notes to her websites, to her social media, to all of her handles there. So I can tell you her website is dianeraymedia.com, but you can look at the show notes for everything else that we're doing there. What she wants people to know is that always ask people what they want to promote when they come on the show, and in a gentle promotion, which is all I'm going to do, is she wants to promote Unity Online, radio.org. And when you go to unityonlineradio.org, you'll hear especially in this time of discord, messages that will bring us back to centered, which will unify us. When I asked Diane what if she had one thing that she wanted to say to the world, what would she say? She sent me a quote from George Harrison that said, "All things must pass." I love that song, by the way. And then she said, "We've been through wars, other pandemics, and bad presidents. We'll get through this as well. Just be kind to each other and remember we're all in this together." If I didn't know better, I would say that message is the message of the Mosaic. Diane Ray, welcome to the Mosaic Podcast. It's what a pleasure to have you here. How are you today?
I'm good. I hope you're a Beatles fan like I am.
Let me tell you, when we got married, we had all of the music was from the Beatles music. So we walked out to "All You Need Is Love." When my wife walked in, it was something in the way it was all beautiful Beatles music. We loved it. So I like to sort of get a moment in time and find out how you entered into the world. So I always ask people, what did your parents do?
My parents were, I guess you could say, kind of solidly middle class people, hardworking. My mother was a school teacher for her whole career, and my father was a social worker for health and rehabilitative services in the state of Florida.
Wow.
So he did that for, gosh, I think over 30 years.
Wow. Those are hard. The social worker, I know because I have a developmentally delayed daughter. So I know how the work of a social worker is really sometimes very artist work, and they often don't get a whole lot of credit for it. Did you see that in your dad and growing up with your dad?
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. It's a difficult job, as is a school teacher. My sister kind of followed in my mother's footsteps, where she was a teacher for many years and then moved into an administrator. So she's now an assistant principal. But my father worked primarily with the elderly, where he would work trying to place people in, different assisted living facilities, make sure that they were okay living on their own. And every Sunday he would pack us up to go to church. And then after church, we would have to visit these different people. So we would visit, Mrs. Maxwell and, I'm remembering these names just from being a
Right.
kid, Paul
Right.
with one leg. He's like, these different people. And I would see the joy on their faces because they were so happy just to have visitors. Although at
Wow.
the time, my sister and brother and I would complain that, "Oh, we
Yeah.
don't want to go there,
Yeah.
but I could see that it meant something to them that someone stopped and cared and wanted to see how they were doing. And he did that for years.
And he continued to take you with him every Sunday?
Yes. Yes. Every Sunday we would visit, we would stop and visit someone, even if just for a few minutes or half an hour or something like that. After St. Anthony's, we would go visit somebody.
They have that beautiful saying, it's a shame the youth is wasted on the young, right?
Yes.
Because what a beautiful way to set a stage for you to see how blessed you are in life, how much you can offer with just a smile or something like that. So where did you go from that place of a hardworking dad who was probably gone lots of hours taking care of people, and a mom who was taking care of teaching, taking care of kids? I talk to a lot of people all day long, and sometimes when the day's over, I don't really want to have to talk to anybody. So the people that suffer sometimes are my family. I did you experience any of that? I can imagine your mom's with kids all day at school, what she wanted to have more kids for, and your dad's working so hard. Where did that leave you?
That's it. That's interesting. I mean, I think it left me with uh, a sense of, well, first, I know all of us have such a strong work ethic. And I see that even now, where sometimes I'll just be, working from home, you're at the computer all day long and you'll be doing it, 10, 11, 12 hours. And then someone will come in, my husband will say, turn it off, you have to eat.
Right. Right.
So I think it left me with, definitely a strong work ethic, to, always kind of forge ahead, and just get your head down and do it. And keep doing it, and also I think a sense of service, and empathy. Like now that you asked me that, kind of looking back, even though my sister and brother and I would always complain, I did like, stopping and visiting those people, and it made me
Yeah.
feel good. And I think I took away that, we all can be a little kinder, and that we have a duty to, kind of give back and try to help people. We are all in this together, right?
Yeah. Well, it's such a poignant message that people in these homes would look forward to seeing people that they don't even know, just so that they can have somebody be there.
Yeah.
And, it sort of puts an umbrella over the society that we live in, that how alone people must feel to long for a moment where strangers come to visit them, so somebody's there speaking with them and being with them. And maybe your dad wasn't a stranger, but you guys probably were, right?
At first, yeah, when we first started stopping by, and then we would visit, some of the same people each week. There was Mrs. Maxwell, Mrs. Shirelli, Paul, and even some of his clients would be people on the street. And I remember one particular guy, his name was Red. My father had a big van, like a Chevy van. And he's like, "Oh, there's Red. We're going to give him a ride." Well, this guy had been on the street for a while and
Oh, wow.
didn't smell too good. So of course, as kids, we're like, "Oh God,"
Right.
we kind of squeezed ourselves to the back of the van, but Red came in, sat in the front, and my father took him for a ride and took him where he needed to go. And he would do that. He would stop for people.
Beautiful. Did you ever stop fighting him on that, or did you guys rebel most of the time?
No, I think after a while we would, get in line. After we got to know the people, as kids, you're like kind of shy and
Right.
like, who is this person? But then we would get to know them, and then we wanted to see Mrs. Maxwell because she made cookies and
Uh,
things like that.
uh, I see. Always cookies,
Bribery,
right?
yeah.
That's right. So growing up with parents like that, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Wow, what did I want to be? I guess, well, I think probably the first thing I thought of would be something with the arts. I would, dream of, being an actress or a dancer or something, crazy like that. Um, but then at an early age around high school, I kind of got sucked into radio
Wow.
and just kind of continued on that path 20, 30 years later. Like you
Wow.
said in the intro, I'm thinking 30 years. Oh my
Right.
gosh. Has it been that long? Holy
Yeah,
cow.
yeah, because when I was growing up, and I think I'm a few years older than you by more than a few, but radio, TV was just coming into the game, and so radio was the big thing. And I remember when we would finish dinner, my dad would sit. We would all go to the living room, and my dad would put on a station that played Nat King Cole, and he would sing to Nat King Cole songs, and my mom would just swoon after him like he was some big, Rat Pack guy. But radio was a big part of people's lives. Was it a big part of your life when you were growing up?
Well, I always loved music, and that was definitely a big part from when I was old enough to, grab my parents' albums and play them. Remember the black discs? I don't know if
Yes.
the younger generation
Yeah.
knows what those are. The big black discs with the little hole. Then
Yeah.
there was ones that had a bigger hole with the plastic thing on it, the 45s. So I would always, I always played those albums, and although a lot of it was show tunes and stuff that my mother loved because she loved, Broadway music and Barbra Streisand and things like that. So I would play those, and she loved classical music too. And so I listened to a lot of that. I remember one of the first things was Peter and the Wolf. There's a whole piece. I think it's Prokofiev, if I'm not mistaken. But music was always a big love. So I think that's what drew me in first.
Yeah.
So I would, call the radio stations and ask for my favorite songs and
Oh, you did?
things
Wow.
like that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, cool. Did you ever have a dedication? Did you ever dedicate it to the one you love anonymously or?
I would try, the big, and it was funny because I later started, that was one of my first jobs in radio, was the big top 40 flamethrower in Miami was Y100. And we would call, for our favorite songs over and over again. I'm trying to remember what I was asking for in the 70s, the 70s
Right.
and 80s, what was popular then. But we would call and ask, can you play this for so and so? And oh yeah, I would ask for all
Love
those
it.
things. And
Love
then
it.
later, that was one of my first jobs, was actually answering the request lines for the DJs at Y100. I think when I was 18 or 19, I started doing that. So I would be the one answering the phone.
So what were you most scared of as a kid?
What was I most scared of? Probably the dark.
The dark. Wow.
And I think, no, actually, the thing that most scared me when I was younger, well, it was the dark at first, but then um, I'll never forget it was one summer, our neighbors, I was brought up Catholic, and our neighbors were more like charismatic Christians. And I think my mother just wanted to get us out of the house, in the summer, and they go, "Hey, ride the bus and we'll take you to the church camp." And we're like, "Yeah, okay." So my mother just sent us there, like I said, I think just to kind of give us something to do. But I remember being in a big auditorium. I was maybe 9 or 10. And the minister said, "What would happen if God came down right now and you were left behind?"
Wow.
And I was, I was terrified, what
Wow.
would happen? So they were doing the whole rapture and all of that. And I remember for a long time being really terrified that would happen,
Wow.
and the devil and all of that. And I think that was around the time The Exorcist, the movie, was
Oh yeah.
popular.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if that was a big fear, was
Wow.
was that.
So does any of that linger? Are you still scared of being left behind?
No, not at all. And I have a much different relationship personally now as I've gotten older and have been able to study and learn a lot more about God and spiritual traditions and that kind of thing. And I'm kind of angry that if I could tell my mother, I'd be angry at her for sending me to that church school. And I think we had talked about it afterwards, because she didn't really know that would be what they would teach, or what
Right.
they would expose us to. and I don't have that fear-based beliefs at
Yeah.
all. And
Yeah.
I hope people can move through that, because I don't believe God is that way at
Yeah.
all.
When did you first discover unity?
Unity, I knew of them. It's interesting because my mother's side of the family, my father was Catholic, but my mother's side was more into New Thought. My grandmother and aunt, my mother's mother and her sister were Christian scientists,
Oh,
and
wow.
my aunt was a Christian Science practitioner, and they were more into New Thought, which I think was really becoming a little more popular around that time. I guess the 60s and 70s, more people were discovering that message.
Yes.
Um, so now I forgot the original question.
I said, how did you go from being Catholic,
Oh, how did I become
and when did you first discover unity? So
familiar
you,
with unity? Yes. So, I mean, I was familiar a little bit with New Thought principles through my mother's side of the family and their teachings, but I actually really didn't know a lot about unity until I started working for them.
wow.
I wasn't sure what they were about. And when Jim Blake, the CEO, first approached me about coming to work with Unity and help to rebuild their network, their radio network and podcast network, one of my questions was, well, you're not going to make me join anything, are you? Or
Right.
do I have to, turn my life over to anything? And he said, no, it's nothing like that. And Unity is a beautiful spiritual tradition. I've really come to love their message.
Yeah.
And then I hope people explore it and think, maybe this could be, something for me.
Well, it's high time somebody does, because in this time of ununity or disharmony or whatever
Yes.
whatever the opposite of unity is, even just the word is comforting. Even just the sound is comforting, and um, I, I don't know if you'll know the answer to this question, or if it's even an appropriate question to ask. And if it puts you on the spot, just let's pass on to the next question, okay?
Now
Um,
I'm curious.
but as I'm thinking about it, I remember many years ago having some conversations with Unity, because I was in a yoga group, and then I was at Hay House, and there was a lot of simpatico with the ideology there. But what I saw as I got more involved with it, it was an elderly growing church group. The people were getting older and older rather than younger and younger. And I haven't been involved in or touched base with Unity in a long time. Is it still the demographic? Is it still a little bit older than it was than like?
It's interesting you say that, because I think that's been a concern of the as an organization, that hey, our followers, our constituency, what I guess whatever you want to call them, is aging out. What are we
Yeah,
going to do? And there's been some shifts and changes within the organization as a whole, and one of their priorities is that, I mean, I always say they're kind of a well-kept secret, because
they really
it's
are.
it's really a beautiful organization, very inclusive. They really like to look at the spiritual teachings within a lot of different traditions. Like if you go to a Unity service, like I went here in San Diego to Unity to check it out, because I didn't know. I wanted to
Right.
see what they were about, and I just found it just was such a beautiful experience. They start off the service with a little bit of meditation. You'll do a 10-minute meditation. Then there'll be a message that may say, well, Lao Tzu said this, the Buddha said this, Paul from the Corinthians said this. Just pulling from these wonderful wisdom traditions and finding the common thread. And I
Yeah.
thought, wow, this is so amazing. And just very loving, very inclusive. There's many LGBTQ ministers, so there's no guilt of who you love or anything like that. So just the overall message is one of, really digging into your own personal power, you
Yeah.
know, and finding that is divine, that we're all pieces of God. And I think that's beautiful.
As you move in, I know we've had a conversation, and I don't want to presuppose that conversation meant more than it did. But one of the things we talk about, and I just spoke to you about when I was, is that I had this feeling that there's a lot more in you than you're letting come out. and that you've been behind the scenes rather than in front of the scenes, and that it was feeling to me like there was something in you that was ready to come out more than what you were letting out. Do you Does that make sense to you still, or should we just drop that topic?
No, you can. Wouldn't want to censor you in any way. No, we can talk about that, certainly. Yeah, I think maybe it's all, maybe that's partly my love of radio. I think one of the reasons I really loved it was that it did have a little bit of anonymity
Yeah,
where people don't really see you, although now people are everywhere and everybody
right.
sees you, but you could be, I guess, whatever people thought you were, and they wouldn't have to see the real you because you could be just the
Yeah,
voice. Um, but yeah, maybe, I guess I hesitate to think that I'm a teacher of any kind. I guess I wouldn't be comfortable in that role.
yeah,
That's why I like to talk to people, like you do. I mean, you love to do the interviews,
yeah.
and that's so much fun because then I get to share other people's message. And I guess I don't feel that I would want the responsibility of being a quote teacher.
Yeah. Uh, Tell me what you think of this, because it's what I really believe. Bucky Fuller said that we can't fix the problems of today with the thinking of today. We've got to create a new paradigm that makes the old paradigm obsolete. And one of the paradigms that I think is changing in the world that we're living in is this paradigm of teacher student, of vertical relationships where people self-help people help people who need self-help. Teachers teach people who need to learn. I don't believe the world is wanting that right now. I believe the world is wanting, pardon my narcissism, a mosaic like reality where it's a horizontal reality, and just by these pieces coming together they create something much more beautiful than they do on their own. And so tell me what you think of that.
I think that's a great point, that it kind of takes the pressure off one individual or certain individuals to just be a teacher. Maybe we can all work together to help each other and share our own individual gifts, whatever they may be, without someone having that mantle or role of being the one in charge, I guess.
Yeah, I think I think part of that model of a horizontal model is we're so much more knowledgeable and powerful, and we can figure things out so much quicker and so much faster and so much better when when we figure it out together, and when we bring all of ourselves together. People now are running around wanting to show their superpowers. They're running around wanting to say, "This is my superpower. This is my superpower, and I got this superpower." And I sort of laugh sometimes because I think even Superman takes off his cape every once in a while. It's just we build this level of hype for ourselves that we can never sustain. And so we loathe ourselves because we're not exceptional all the time. And we think we have to be exceptional all the time. And one of the things the mosaic has sort of shown me is that extraordinaries create extraordinary things. That it isn't one person who has to be extraordinary. It's when extraordinaries come together, extraordinary things happen, because that's the nature of extraordinaries coming together. And I think that's the new model somehow. And so, first of all, do you even what do you think about that?
I agree with you definitely that we're stronger as a collective, and all of us working together towards a common goal. I'm kind of, I guess, leery, or I hate to say suspicious, of when we put one person up into that guru role,
Yeah,
as you're the one that is going to tell me how to change my life.
yeah,
You're the one that has the answer, when really the answer is within all of us individually.
yeah,
And I've heard other teachers say this too. I think Jan Levan Zant was like, you really know, right? You might not want to admit it, but when you really get quiet and think about it, you know your answer for yourself.
yeah,
You may need help peeling back the layers, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of therapy. I mean,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we should all do it. It's great. But I guess I'm leery of people giving away their individual power
Yeah, I don't think
to
it's
someone
working
else.
anymore.
Yeah.
All those, so many of those gurus are being dethroned. So many of, you look in the church and ministers are playing with little boys, and not all of them by any means, but swamis are having sexual relationships with women.
Hmm.
People are abusing their power. Rajneesh is abusing power. So I don't think the model is built to sustain itself either. And
Right.
so it's so much more comforting to think of us as a mosaic. So, as you think about walking out from behind the curtain, does it comfort you at all to know that you can be part of a group of people, that you don't have to hold the mantle of the leader on your shoulders?
Yes. For me personally, that would be a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in democracy and giving everyone their voice or their chance to be heard, rather than being the loudmouth that drowns everybody else out. And maybe I'm just coming from a place of, I just finished listening to this podcast series, Guru: The Dark Side of Enlightenment,
Yes.
about James Arthur Ray, which is a fabulous series if you get a chance to listen to it. And it really made me think of, the person telling you that I know what you should do for your life,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what tragedy can become of that.
So, where do you see yourself in 3 years?
Three, 3 to 5. Let's see. Well, I mean, I'm working on a couple of other projects too. I mean, I would love to see Unity Online Radio continue to grow and thrive, and become a really great tool and resource for the Unity organization as a whole. And, maybe turn some people on to their message, and have them continue to grow. That would be amazing. I would love to, continue doing my podcast, and talk to people, and be involved in media as long as it's still fun. That would be great for a few more years. And I'm also working on building up another podcast platform specifically for mind, body, spirit hosts,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping that will be successful. So it's interesting to, and especially in the podcast world, which I think is really just growing and morphing and changing. There's a lot of things happening, but there's a lot of opportunity even during this time of, where we're stuck kind of in place, and thinking that everything is just going down the tubes. There can be glimmers of hope within that as well. So I'm hoping to continue to be able to work and contribute, and have some of these projects take root and hopefully succeed. But I shouldn't say hopefully. Louise would tell me not to
That's
say
right. That
that.
one, that would be the best thing to say. Um, so when 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever that right amount of years ago was, there really weren't that many mediums out there for a person's voice to be heard. There was a few television stations, there were some radio stations, there were a few newspapers that were going out, and the way people did it is they galvanized themselves around the country and did book tours and did messages and spoke in front of audiences, and wherever they did, however it worked, and that worked for a little while. Um, when I was at Hay House, it stopped working. Nobody was coming to see anybody. I mean, unless they were world renowned people, unless they were a Sylvia Brown who was a psychic and they hoped that she would give them a reading when they came to her book signing, which she didn't because it was too packed. Um, then a new medium came, which was this radio podcast. But now it seems like everybody and their mother has a podcast, right?
They do.
And I even have I'm I'm the least likely person to even have one, and I have this one, and I created 50 conversations with 50 strangers, which is another one. So people have 2 podcasts and 3 podcasts and 5 podcasts. I understand that everybody wants to be heard and has something to say, but it seems like it's gone from dearth to overwhelming. And now there's so many people talking on so many avenues. How do you get heard? How have you found you can get a podcast heard?
Well, you're right. I mean, there is just, a tidal wave of people, everybody and their brother has a podcast. There, and it is becoming, it's a lot more crowded. It's a lot louder, there's just the crowd is deafening, so it is hard. It's hard to get your voice heard. I mean, I think one of the things, the mistakes that people make is they try to be like all things to all people and try to be, mass quantity rather than quality. I think if you can get kind of a niche of people, and have people really listen, then just try to, appeal to the mass, then you'll probably be a lot more successful. And I think like anything, it takes time,
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
have to keep hacking away at it and do all the grunt work,
Yeah.
the social media posts, the everyday stuff to get the word out. And if you really want to continue, I mean, I think a lot of people will give up after a while. Some people will try it, it won't be for them. I mean, I see it all the time too, even with, radio hosts and people that I've worked with. They'll do a show for a while, then they'll get busy or something else will happen and they can't do it,
Yeah.
and they'll move on to do something else. I think that there'll be people that'll throw their hat into the podcast ring and they'll maybe do a few and then, fizzle out or stop. I think the cream will rise to the top.
Yeah. That niche market that you spoke about,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't mean this in any way like investigatorial. I don't even know if that's a word, but like that. But even in Unity, the feeling that you're having, even in the search that you're going through Unity, where you're speaking to an older market, and you're trying to grow your market from an older market to a younger market, that all, even though it seems like it's the same niche, it really isn't, because the people, it's like growing into a new niche. So how does someone maintain, I mean, you've done radio for a long time, how does someone maintain their niche when their niche is disappearing? How do you revamp your niche? How do you grow your niche? How do you make it something that is interesting to a larger group of people than just the people that in this case are dying out?
Just the smaller group. Yeah. How do you grow that? I mean, that's kind of how to grab the golden ticket, right? Like if you had a specific formula that would work,
Right.
here it is. This is
Well,
what
that's
you
what I'm
do.
hoping you've got. Come on
No,
now.
I wish I did. Like, I don't, I sometimes I'll look at my download numbers on my podcast. I'm like, and it kind of hovers at a certain point and that's it. And I don't know if it'll become some big thing. And I guess I don't really have that much control over it. Um, it's hard to say. It's like, what's the answer to how does something go viral? How
Yeah.
can you make a video viral or a podcast or anything? I guess just being in the right place at the right time, but keeping to trying to expand your audience. The more people that you talk to, the the more places you can put your material. You could do a YouTube channel, you could still do the podcast, you could guest on other people's shows,
Yeah.
continue to kind of get the tentacles out there
Yeah.
as much as possible. But yeah, it is hard. And especially within the podcast world, what there was a few people, a few years ago, it's only really been kind of a thing for, not even 10 years, I don't think, less than a decade.
Yeah.
So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what's happening. And especially within the podcast world, there's a lot of companies buying each other out. Like I saw the same thing in radio where, Clear Channel was bought by this, was bought by this. So there's a lot of that acquiring happening within the podcast world as well.
Yeah. What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? I don't know. I guess, why is that so hard to think about? I guess what I'm most proud of would be that I think that I'm a really hard worker. I'm a good friend. I'm there when you need me.
Yeah.
I think I'm proud of that. I like to think of myself as that kind of person, to be
Yeah.
there for your friends and family. Uh, so I'd say I'm pretty proud of that. Uh, I don't know what else
Does
would I
it
be proud
does it
of.
interest you? Does it interest you that you have pause on this question?
Yeah, because I think, well, I'm proud of this. I guess I'm proud of being able to kind of stick to my guns and do what I enjoy doing, instead of really, like, I've seen what happens when people kind of slog in jobs that they really hate, or doing things that they really don't want to do, or what their family wanted them to do.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of been able to, you know, beat my own drum, I guess. Even though my parents they weren't really thrilled about my radio choice. They didn't
Right.
think that was such a great, stable thing to do, but I did anyway, and like moving to California, and my family didn't want me to do that. And I remember not long after my mother passed away, I was talking to my sister, and she said, Mom was always proud of the fact that you weren't afraid to take a chance. So I think I would have to say I'm proud that I've been able to take some chances,
Yeah, that's a huge
even though I
thing.
was scared.
Like push that one up to the front,
I'll
because
push
that's
it to
a
the front.
that's
Yeah.
a huge, that's a huge thing.
I
Uh,
think you have to take a chance. That, there's a saying, like, no great reward without risk, or something like that. I
yeah,
think sometimes we want to play it safe, and not every time things have worked out.
yeah. You talk to a lot of people in the self-help and in this field.
Yes.
Why do you think everybody wants to play it so safe? Even those people do. To a certain degree, even the big people play it safe.
Somewhat, you're right. Yeah, they do. I think it's fear just holds us back from so many things. Fear of making that phone call, fear of telling that person you love them, fear of taking that job, fear of quitting that job.
What do
All
you
of
think?
those things.
I love that, but what do you think we're so scared of? What are we all so pandemically scared of?
So many things. Humiliation, failure. I think probably failure is one of the biggest things. Fear of change. We want things to stay the same, and I do the same thing. I'm afraid of the same things.
So what
I'm,
do
I'm
you
afraid of change.
what are you're what why are you afraid of change?
Why?
Yeah,
Because I want it to be where it's comfortable and safe. I don't want it to be the fear of the unknown. And you want someone to tell you, well, this is going to work out if you do this. Okay.
right.
And then you do it and it doesn't work out. Well, no, what do I do? But I really think fear is like the root of everything, of what keeps us back from everything.
I had on my podcast a few months ago someone he was brilliant in his marketing. He calls himself the failure coach or the fail coach, and he teaches people to fail.
Mm-hmm.
It's the antithesis of what you think a coach would do. But he said
Right.
there's been no great success without failure,
Right.
and so you can't succeed until you take the risk and fail, and you have to just get comfortable enough with failing that you are okay with it because nothing's going to happen because as long as you stay in your same comfortable place, that's what, like Wayne said, you're going to die with your music still inside you
Right.
because you're not
Right.
taking that risk to get out of that comfort. Nothing special happens in the comfort zone. All the
No,
magic is one step out or five steps out, or right. And
it's
we
so
all know
true.
it, and we all know it. We all play the psychology. We all talk to these people that say all this stuff to us, and yet how do we live? We live scared and in our comfort zone because we're comfortable and safe because we don't want to take a risk.
Right. We live small, and that's so sad. It's so heartbreaking. And I see it with friends and so many people that are afraid to really live the way they want to live, and do what is really in their heart to do. And you just have to, I always tell myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, when the scariest thing I could have done was move from Florida to California.
Yeah,
Oh my God, what a
Not
scary
that
thing.
scary. You don't have earthquake. You don't have, yeah, go to earthquakes from
Right.
hurricanes.
Hurricanes or earthquakes, people
But
are,
humidity to not humidity. Your way, it's not
well,
that
it
scary.
was, it was a great, it was a great move, but I would tell myself, well, I'm really afraid, there's no guarantee. But then like, what's the worst that can happen? You move back,
Yeah.
like always, if you think, well, what's the worst case scenario? Okay, well, I can manage that. And even when I did move out here the first year, I moved out here to accept a job. And then there was a massive layoff and we all got fired. I'm like, well, I already moved my life out here. What am I going to do? Then I got another job and then I ended up losing that job. So it seemed like all these bad things were happening. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to have to move back to Florida. But I knew in my heart, like, no, that's really not where I should be. And then I saw the ad to work at Hay House and it said Hay House Radio, needs producer. And I'm like, well, what is this? And it was right when they were starting to launch the radio network.
Yeah.
And you and I missed paths, unfortunately.
Yeah. But
We know
just,
a lot of the same people, but we weren't there at the same time.
yeah.
But you were there at the very beginning with Louise, growing
I
the
was there
company.
early. I was there when they were doing about $3 million a year. I came in, and then I left when they were doing $100 million a year. But I always had the ability somehow, I don't know how, to operate within my own sphere, even within a group. Like everybody worked out of the office, but me, I lived 5 miles from the office, but I worked out of my home. And I don't know how I got away with it. I think it was just because the value that I brought was an independent spirit that didn't play by the rules and would do things that were different than what the people did. And it brought I was a risk taker. And normally when HR comes into a company, that's when I go, because they don't like me very much, and I don't really love them because they want to just keep everything within boxes.
I kind of share your feelings with HR.
Yeah.
I've seen it, in big companies and big corporations, and then smaller companies. Yeah, that seems to be the death knell, right? When when HR shows up.
So
Oh no.
I want to circle back because here you for the last few minutes have been talking about how important it is to not stay stuck, not stay in those places that you see people that are playing small.
Yes.
And a few minutes before that, you said, I even do that too.
Yes.
Are you old enough to remember overhead projectors?
Yes.
Okay. So take those two sheets of plastic with both images drawn on them and put them on at the same time. What do you see on this wall in front of you? In other words, I don't really want to take chances. I'm not good at taking chances. I like to be comfortable. I want to do that. And then a few minutes later, well, we're playing small, and I see that people are just not living the life that they really want to live because they're scared to do that. What picture do you see of your life in those two things? And if I'm too personal, just tell me shut up.
So on the one hand, if I don't take the chance, and then on the other hand, if I do, so like worst case scenario and then best case scenario.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Well, worst case scenario would be I just give up. I don't take the chance, like trying to launch this new podcast network, and nothing ever stays the same. So eventually, the position I have will, for whatever reason, go away, and then I'll end up losing everything and be living on the streets, pushing a cart. I don't, and then it would just get worse from there. I
At
know
least you're in a warm environment here. You're
I'd be
not like in
warm.
Minnesota, right?
And even, I guess, even worst case scenario, like if it all just went to hell, then I guess I'd have to move back to Florida and live with my sister and, be in the back room and be the crazy Aunt Diane talking about the good old days of radio. So that would be the worst case scenario, I guess. Like
So
everything,
pause for a minute. Do you realize that 98% of the world would look at your worst case scenario and think it would be the best possible day that they could ever have?
right. No, that's true. It's all perspective, right?
It really is all perspective.
I could, yeah, look
Because
at,
I mean, homelessness is different than being the crazy aunt that's with your sister, right? But having a sister to be able to go to in the event that everything fell, and knowing that you had some place to go, rather than a bridge. Even if you had a bridge, you'd figure out a way. You're resourceful. You've done it 10,000 times before.
Right. I mean, I'd figure something out unless I had some horrible mental breakdown or, well, maybe that would be the worst case scenario,
Yeah.
having some horrible physical thing, happen or lose your mind or, yeah, any of those, that would be horrible.
But
So
Tony Robbins has a beautiful saying, and he says, when you are at the lowest possible moment, where you think nothing in the world could get worse, when it's your darkest night, where your mind is going crazy and it's driving you crazy with all the things that it's telling you, where you feel like you have no idea where you're going to get your next meal from, let alone how you're going to pay your rent, that's the time to celebrate, because you have to know victory is near at that point, because there's no place to go but up at that point.
right.
And it really fits in with a philosophy of the mosaic, which is the trash man. And the trash man is that character which empties us out of everything. Like when we see that we would fail and we would lose everything that we would have, a lot of what we have is keeping us from succeeding. And so maybe failure under a different lens would be just the vehicle that would allow us to empty ourselves out and be filled with something fresh and new.
True. Yes. That's such a great way to think of it. And if I look back on every perceived horrible thing that's happened, as far as jobs or anything like that, even though it may have been the horrible thing at the time, when you look back, it was the catalyst for something better.
Always, right?
That's always been true.
So where do we get the hypnosis? I mean, you're talking to all these different people. These are beacons of light in the metaphysical world. What are they saying? What are you feeling? What do you get? How is it like? I love you, and I'm asking this because I'm talking to myself in the mirror. I'm not talking to you, okay? But I'm just wanting to get another person's perspective. How is it possible that we can believe that when our personal evidence of everything we know from our heart, not from our mind is scared and we'll figure out all the reasons why to be scared, but our heart and soul, we know that's not going to happen. How do we get hypnotized by the power of the fearful mind to be like a deer in the headlights that just won't move and have the car ram into it and kill it? I mean, when will we wake up from that? When will we say all we have to do is walk across the street and we won't get hit?
Right. I don't, I think I was thinking about that, um, just how things have changed just over the past, 10, 20 years. And I really think that social media has a lot to do with it in the fact that while there's so many great things about social media, like I've connected with friends I haven't seen since childhood and, you know, high school friends, like things like that, which is beautiful. But on the other hand, I think that we have this glamour of our lives should be like that person. Why don't I have that?
Yeah.
And it just kind of amplifies that feeling of lack, that we're not good enough because we're looking at someone else. And in reality, that's just their projection. They could be just as miserable as the rest of us, but we don't know that. And I think we never had that before.
Yeah.
We never had that in our faces.
Well, but I think we did, because when I grew up, there was always the saying of keeping up with the Joneses. You know, the Joneses were always the people that had but we never know what the Joneses have. We just see an outward persona. Like, I know a lot of the people that are broadcasting on social media and telling us what a great life they have, because they call me up when their life is shitty. Pardon my language.
Right.
Right. And so the persona of who posts what on Facebook, like I purposely post. My brother says to me, "Why do you post such vulnerable, terrible things? Like, why do you knock yourself down on Facebook?" I said, "I don't knock myself down. I'm just honest. You know, if I'm going through something, I share it with people, because there's too many people in the world that think that everybody, like, people look at me and they think I'm either homeless or a wise man. My mom had it better. She called me a wise guy. You know, I'm still sort of a wise guy, you know, but we have to be real. We have to break through this veneer, and otherwise And you know better than that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to call you out on radio, and but you know this. You're trained in this. You're working in this field. That it. How do we shut off? My wife has a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful tagline to her name, and the work she does. She says, "Trust in the power of your heart." And she has people call. I remember first when she put it out there, a woman, a friend of ours, came and said, "I can't trust in the power of my heart. My heart's led me astray all the time." That's not the, we're not, she's not talking about the emotional heart. She's talking about the power of the heart, the silent heart, that heart that knows what real love is, not the emotional. I'm going to go get this because I'm lonely and I want to have this. There's a real power. There's a real difference between those places. And our mind is just so caught up in fear, 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 fear. We're scared of everything. I gave a workshop in the East Coast in one of the top resorts in the country. And the people that came to it were these rich, rich, rich people. And there was a woman who sat with me. She was sitting quiet the whole time I was talking. And after everybody left to go to lunch, she said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" And I said, "No, that's what I'm here for. Let's talk." She said, "Well, what if something happens?" And I somehow instinctively said, "How many times have you asked what if rather than just looking at what is?" And she said, "Danny, I don't think you understand. I have 40 journals full of what if scenarios so that I'll know what to do in the event that happens." I said, "Really, how many times have you looked at them?" She said, "I've never looked at them, but I know they're there." I said, "Do you have a fireplace?" She said, "Yeah, I do." I said, I want you when you go home from this weekend to take those 40 books and put them in the fireplace and just watch them burn. They're killing your life.
The what ifs. Yeah, what if? I mean, you can go down that road, you know.
It's a
Like, what
never
if
ending road.
anything? Yeah, it never ends.
And nobody ever asks, what if I find the greatest joy of my life? What if I really succeed at what I'm doing? What if I take a risk and it's like so fabulous? What if I grow so much more than I ever could imagine myself growing? What if I find the person that I fall in love with? What if I find the job that's the ideal place? What if I spend my time doing things I love and adore and I get paid good money for doing it rather than just doing one or the two without the other? We don't ask those what ifs.
Right. It's
It's,
always what if the negative, you know, worst case scenario.
yeah.
It's, I guess, just being aware when you start thinking that and trying to make those shifts. Remind yourself every day. You know, it's the one great thing about Louise, and you can attest to this, you know, I've been in the office with her, and you know, if you said, you know, well, if we do this, we'll kill two birds with one stone. And she'd say, well, why do you want to do that for?
Right.
You know, why would you kill the bird? Or if I said something like, well, I hope I remember one time I said, oh, I'm dying to see that. It's like, no, you're not. You're not
Yeah.
dying. You know,
Yeah.
just like being aware of saying stuff.
Yeah.
And I never thought like that until I started working, you know, for Louise.
Yeah.
I never realized what I was saying in that
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
how important it is.
I think it's so important to look at the mosaic taught me a equation. The equation is our thoughts become our words tell our stories, and our stories create our lives. And if we're unhappy with any segment of any of it, we can change any one of those things, and all of it has to change because they're all dependent on the other. If we change our thoughts, our words will become different. If our words are different, our stories will be different. If our stories are different, our life will be different. If we want to change our life, we just go back and take a look at our stories that we're telling. If we change our stories, then our words will have to change. Our thoughts will change, and our life will. You can attack it from any place that feels comfortable. What's one thing you found in your work that really surprised you?
Let's see. I think going back to some of the teachers that we've worked with, that we're all just human with fears and failings and
Yeah.
foibles and all of those things.
Yeah.
Um, that we can put some of these people on a pedestal that they know everything,
Yeah.
and they're just as flawed
Yeah.
as all of us,
Yeah.
the rest of us.
Yeah.
So I think kind of seeing the man behind the curtain was interesting.
Yeah. And did they let you see them?
Some people did. Like I will say, Dr. Wayne Dyer was pretty authentic in his failings, or what
Yeah.
we would perceive as failings, but things he wasn't proud of. He would talk about it, his drinking or relationships. And I worked with him for a long time, for 8 years. Every
Yeah.
Monday we would do his show, and he would share a lot about his life. And yeah, he was okay with showing that part of himself.
Yeah.
Other people, not so much.
Yeah. I remember one person that I worked with there. I said to them, I've watched so many people come through, that good people that I found that when they were really good, gentle people. And I brought them here, and we started to build their name and build their reputation and build their work. And they went from being the kindest, sweetest people you ever want to meet to some of the biggest assholes you could ever imagine. And this person looked at me and said, if you ever see that happening to me, will you promise to bend me over and give me a kick in the butt? And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, bend over. And he said, no, I'm really serious. And I said, no, I am too. And he didn't talk to me for about 5 years.
5 years, wow.
5 years, a long time.
The
Uh,
ego's a strong thing.
yeah. And so, what do you think that makes people who are in public personas feel like they have to be one person in public and another person in private?
Wow, that pressure. I guess it's the pressure to sustain what they've created, that they have to keep up that persona of whatever that may be,
Hmm.
you know, and the fear, maybe there's other, maybe they're supporting a bunch of people, and they
Yeah.
have to keep the gravy train going,
I
you
guess
know.
what I'm wondering, even more central to that, is why don't they just show themselves as they are, so they don't have to keep up a persona?
Right.
I mean, if people like people, they like them for who they are. They'll like them for their vulnerability as well as they will their arrogance. I mean, I'm saying
I
it.
would think so.
I'm saying arrogance. It's not really arrogance, but you know what I'm saying.
Right, right. Well, it's like Brene Brown, has talked about the power of vulnerability and being vulnerable. And it's hard to do that. I mean, I had a situation in a work situation with someone that I didn't really like at all. And they probably really didn't like me, but we had to work together. And it just gave me so much stress and anxiety. And I spoke to one of our esteemed teachers, and he said, why don't you approach this person and be vulnerable and say, look, so I did. And I tried that. And I'd like to say, and it was great. And we hugged and everything was wonderful. And that didn't really happen, but it did make things a little bit easier. And I'm like, look, we have to communicate. I'm trying to appeal to you here.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
have to like me. That's okay.
yeah,
But we have to figure something out, and I mean, I felt better about it.
yeah,
So, but it was hard. I didn't want to be vulnerable.
yeah.
I wanted to still, be the bitch, you're not going to tell me that, that kind of thing. So it's hard to do that sometimes, but when you
Super
make
hard.
the effort, it can be worth it. I think it was worth it, even though things may not have worked out exactly how I wanted it. It did make the situation better.
What I want to wind down because we're getting to the end, and I could talk to you forever, which is you're easy to talk to and a pleasure to talk to. Um, what's a pivot point in your life that you never thought you see? In other words, you were doing something, living life one way, and then all of a sudden something happened, and you just saw life completely differently, and you never could even imagine that would happen.
Whoa, pivot point. Wow. I'd have to say if anyone has ever been with someone when they pass, is always a major pivot point, and
Yeah.
really brings home, your own mortality and all of those things. And I think, the time I spent with my mother before she passed, and being able to be with her at that moment, was really pivotal, because I think it just changes you and your DNA to
Yeah.
lose someone like that you love. And it's a part of the human experience. We'll all go through that. We'll all lose someone at some point. And I guess that realization that, you can't go back,
Yeah.
and anything that you would want to change, you have to be at peace with whatever had transpired, you
Yeah.
know, and be okay with it. But I was blessed, and I consider it a gift that I was able to be there, for her during
Yeah.
that time. And I don't feel that anything was left unsaid.
That's so
So
beautiful.
I would urge people to, don't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to be there.
That was such a powerful point that you just made, that when someone passes, you can't go back and change something after they passed. I mean, sure, the spirit lives and you can have conversations with them, but you don't have that same face to face moment when someone passes. And that if you have the opportunity now before someone passes to make peace, or to try and at least come put down your wall and just say what you need to say to people from a kind and loving way, not like, you son of a gun, why do you keep doing this to me? Um, it'll be such a valuable moment for you in that moment when people do pass.
Yes. No, I totally, absolutely. It was the best, um, the best thing that I could have done at that moment. I mean, I'm so glad that I was able to be there with her. And yeah, are there things I would do differently? Sure. Was I a
Oh,
rotten teenager? Yes. Would I go back and wish I could apologize for all of those horrible things? Yes. But I think I would hope that she knows, if there is any truth to our consciousness going on, which I hope that's true,
yeah,
that she knows that.
yeah. With that said, what a perfect way to come to the last question. Our world's been hit by quite a few things lately. We're on the heels of a Me Too movement that seems like it was millennials ago, right? Millenniums ago, I guess it is. Millennials are people.
Right.
Millenniums ago, uh, and we are now in a pandemic where the whole world has been put on pause for a bit of time, and it's coming back, but it's almost gone back to pause again. Um, and we're in a situation where we're having a lot of unrest around what color a person's skin is, and their feelings of whether they matter in the world or not because of the way they've been treated. Having the micro experience of having your parent pass away and not being able to go back and change something, what might you be able to take from that micro moment to a macro moment to say to a world today that may not have a chance to say anything soon? What would you say?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we're in such a tough time right now, and I don't know if this was. I've talked to some people that have called this the divine chaos. This is all supposed to happen. We needed to have this time to look at ourselves and what we're doing. I mean, clearly we're in the middle of a big evolution and a big transformation. And like we talked about earlier in the beginning of the show, how we don't like change and we're fighting against it. And maybe we need to just, you know, let go a little bit and let change unfold and push it forward. We need these things to shift. And if we can learn to be a little more tolerant and a little kinder, as hard as it is and as angry as we get, and as right as we think we are. And I do the same thing. I mean, if I'll be honest, do I go over to the Fox News page and provoke people? Sometimes. I've done that in the past. But who am I to tell people what to think? I guess so. I need to learn it too.
Yeah.
Tolerance, being a little kinder, and I really do think that George Harrison was right, and all things must pass, and this too will pass. Other plagues and pandemics and things have happened, and we'll get through. And I just hope it's not for nothing. I hope we come out of it better than we went
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Diane, if people have fallen in love with you like I have just through this time together, how would they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Well, you can listen to my show on unityonlineradio.org every Wednesday.
And your show is
If you
called, and
so,
your show is called.
it's called Be Present, the Diane Ray Show. I wish I could have come up with a flashier name, but
That's
I
a
don't
great
know.
name.
There's dogs barking out here. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, check out my show. It's every Wednesday, 1 Pacific, 3 Central, 4 Eastern, or get the podcast on your favorite podcast provider. You can reach me through my website at dianeraymedia.com. I'm also on all forms of social media, Twitter at Diane Ray 1. I'm on Instagram, Diane Ray 66. I'm on Facebook. I'm on them all. I'm easy to find.
And we'll have all those links there. I want to thank you so much for taking your time and being with us today. And I want to thank those people who listen to the podcast. Uh, you have another podcast. I moved away from my 50 conversations for a minute and brought another podcast to you. So I want to thank you for being loyal to the podcast. If you love this podcast, share it with your friends. If you like it even more, go listen to Be Present on the Unity radio network. Um, Be Present with Diane Ray podcast.
And thank you so much, Danny.
It's an absolute honor. If I could just take a minute and summarize, one of the things that really struck me was we know so much. And I think that when I look at the pandemic of what's going on and I look at the situation that's happening, no one freaks out when we remodel a house. We decide we're going to remodel the house, and we know for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, it's going to be utter chaos inside. It's going to look like hell. It's going to nothing's going to feel like it should be. It's in its right place. Even the architecture of the house sometimes will change. We'll walk in, and normally we're used to having steps, 3 steps in, and another 5 steps back, and we trip and fall. But over time, when the house gets remodeled and redone, and the house needs to be remodeled and redone, the walls need to be shifted. Things need to be changed. When we come back into that house, it'll be a beautiful house, and it'll be a house where we feel we can rest and have comfort in. Let's just give this earth a chance to remodel. Let's give ourselves the chance to remodel our minds. And let's not worry too much about what will happen, because we have an unbelievable capacity to reinvent ourselves and to resurface. So, the beautiful thing about this podcast is it's all about pivot points in a person's life. This is a pivot point. We don't like change, like Diane said, but change has to happen for us to go to the next place. Whether we like it or not, day doesn't care that night doesn't want to come. When it's time for night to come, day leaves. It's just that simple. Night doesn't care that day wants to stay longer. When it's time for it to show up, it shows up. It's not. We don't have a choice in this. We have a choice in a lot of things, but it's time for this world to move on. Take a look at the pivot points in your life. Take a look of how scared you are to live the life that you know is your life to live, and ask yourself why. And if you can even move one step in the direction of the life that you dream of having, will have done a big thing today in this discussion. I want to thank you for showing up again. Diane, is there anything you want to say before we go?
No, I'm so grateful that you were able to have me on and just have this conversation and connect here in this time and space. That's a beautiful thing.
It's my absolute honor. Okay, thank you again, Mosaic people. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like it, share it around. Also, it'll be on Apple Podcasts and iTunes Podcasts or whatever the heck they call it now. It'll be available there. Please, if you like it, give it some stars. Give us your comments. And until next podcast, stay connected, okay? Ciao.